She was clinically dead for 6 minutes. No pulse, no breath, no light, just a body on the verge of becoming a memory. In July 2018, Demi Lovato, once the bright-eyed Disney darling, was found unconscious in her Hollywood Hills home. The world gasped. The headlines screamed overdose. But what they didn't scream, what they couldn't possibly scream, was that for 6 haunting minutes, Demi's heart had completely stopped. Oxygen deprived her brain. Her organs were on the brink of shutting down, and no one knew if she'd ever wake up again. Just days before, she had stood on stage, powerful and radiant, performing for thousands. But behind the spotlight, there was silence. A silence so deafening, it swallowed years of hidden battles against addiction, against depression, against the polished image Disney demanded, and the identity she struggled to claim as her own. This wasn't the first time Demi had cried for help. Her 2018 hit Sober was a confession masked as melody, an apology to the world that had been listening but never truly hearing. And when the overdose happened, it wasn't just a collapse. It was a culmination, a breaking point years in the making. She survived, barely, but survival came at a cost. Vision loss, brain damage, the betrayal of those closest to her, and the harsh glare of a public that couldn't decide whether to mourn, forgive, or blame. This is not a simple comeback story. This is about how a child star manufactured for perfection spiraled into near death, and what we weren't supposed to see, what the cameras didn't catch, what the lyrics tried to warn us about. Because Demi Lovato didn't just overdose, she disappeared. And in the ashes, someone else returned, someone the world wasn't ready for. Demi Lovato was never meant to blend in. Born in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1992 and raised in Texas, Demetria Devon Lovato grew up in the shadow of conflicting legacies. Her father, Patrick, was an aspiring musician with deep Mexican-American roots, a man whose absence would haunt her for years. Her mother, Diana, was a former Dallas Cowboys cheerleader and country singer. The blend of talent and turmoil was in her DNA from the beginning. By age 7, Demi was already performing. At 10, she was cast on Barney and Friends, trading smiles with another rising child star, Selena Gomez. But it was in 2008, with the premiere of Camp Rock on the Disney Channel, that everything changed. Paired with the Jonas Brothers, her charisma and powerhouse vocals launched her into tween stardom overnight. Within months, she wasn't just a Disney actress, she was a brand. Concert tours, albums, TV shows, merchandise. Demi Lovato became a global phenomenon before she could legally drive. But Disney stardom came at a price. Behind the camera lens and meticulously managed press appearances was a girl already unraveling. While fans saw a bubbly teenager singing "This Is Me" with infectious confidence, Demi was battling severe body image issues, bullying at school, and an eating disorder that would dominate much of her adolescence. In interviews, she later recalled being called fat every day by classmates, leading her to self-harm as early as age 11. Disney's picture-perfect standards didn't help. The relentless pressure to maintain a spotless image, stay thin, be likable, and never show weakness created an impossible cage. As the 2010s dawned, the teen star ecosystem was thriving. Miley Cyrus was rebelling. Selena Gomez was crossing over into film. The Jonas Brothers were navigating solo careers. But while others seemed to transition with grace, or at least media control, Demi was combusting. Her fame didn't protect her. It isolated her. She entered rehab for the first time in 2010 after punching a backup dancer during a South American tour. The incident was later attributed to a complete emotional breakdown, fueled by bulimia, bipolar disorder, and secret substance abuse. Disney tried to sanitize the story. A press release stated she was seeking help for emotional and physical issues. But the truth was darker. Her team had been hiding the depth of her addiction. And even after the world found out, no one seemed prepared for the reality of a Disney star dealing with such raw adult issues. What made Demi's journey different wasn't just the chaos, it was her honesty. In 2011, she released Skyscraper, a haunting ballad of survival that hinted at her internal battles. But even as the world applauded her bravery, few understood that the storm was far from over. She became a symbol, a face for mental health awareness, a poster child for resilience. Yet all the while, she was slipping. This section of her life, between rehab visits, sold-out concerts, interviews laced with half-truths, is where the contradictions began. She would stand in front of cameras, smiling through speeches about sobriety, while privately battling relapses. Her management team, in attempts to protect the brand, reportedly exercised extreme control, removing phones, checking hotel rooms, even forbidding her from being alone. It was not recovery, it was surveillance. What started as a teen success story began morphing into a disturbing cycle. Fame, fall, confession, applause, relapse. Rinse, repeat. The media covered her missteps with a strange mixture of pity and spectacle. The public watched, not with compassion, but with curiosity. How long could she hold on? And beneath it all was a question that no one, neither her fans, nor the press, nor Demi herself, was brave enough to fully answer. Was she truly recovering, or was she just surviving long enough to fall apart again? By 2018, that question would be answered with chilling clarity. It began like every Disney fairy tale, bright, magical, and full of promise. Demi Lovato's ascent was swift. From the moment she belted out "This Is Me" in Camp Rock, she wasn't just another Disney face, she was the voice. Her vocal power separated her from her peers. While Miley played the rebel and Selena leaned into elegance, Demi channeled raw, emotional intensity. Fans gravitated to her not just for her talent, but for her vulnerability. She wasn't perfect, and that made her real. Her debut album, Don't Forget, 2008, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. She was only 16. The follow-up, Here We Go Again, went straight to number 1. Then came her Disney Channel sitcom, Sunny with a Chance, solidifying her as a multi-platform star. For the world, she was living a dream. For Demi, it was a balancing act on a wire frayed at both ends. She toured with the Jonas Brothers. She dated Joe Jonas until the breakup became tabloid fodder. She was featured on every magazine cover, but even in moments of glamour, her eyes hinted at exhaustion. The girl with the big voice and bigger smile was also self-medicating behind closed doors, quietly spiraling. In 2010, the cracks could no longer be hidden. During a South American tour with the Jonas Brothers, Demi snapped. She punched a backup dancer. Days later, she dropped off the tour and entered rehab. The world was stunned. What followed was her first public revelation. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, suffered from bulimia, and self-harmed. She was 18. Rather than bury the truth, Demi faced it head-on. That same year, she released Skyscraper, a song so haunting in its honesty, it felt like a cry from the edge. Critics praised her for confronting her demons. Fans called her a survivor. It was supposed to be a turning point, but it wasn't. Behind the scenes, the cycle continued. Between interviews promoting recovery and empowerment, Demi relapsed. Alcohol, cocaine, oxycodone. Her team tightened control. A sober companion was assigned. Meals were monitored. She was placed under what some described as a sober dictatorship. But the more they tried to control her, the more desperate she became to escape. Her 2013 album Demi spawned hits like Heart Attack and Neon Lights, further propelling her into the pop stratosphere. She became a judge on The X Factor, toured internationally, and released a book of affirmations titled Staying Strong. To the world, she was a phoenix, a walking redemption arc. But Demi was playing two roles, one for the world and one in the shadows. In private, she later admitted she wasn't sober at all. The people around her believed she was clean, but she had learned to fake drug tests, lie to therapists, and manipulate everyone around her. Her 2017 documentary Simply Complicated was supposed to be the full story, but even that was laced with omissions. I wasn't honest, she confessed later. I wasn't ready. By 2018, she released Sober, a gut-wrenching ballad admitting she had relapsed again. The lyrics were a confession, an apology to fans, family, and herself. "I'm sorry that I'm here again," she sang. "I promise I'll get help." Less than a month later, she would be found unconscious, not breathing, blue-lipped, and minutes from death. In hindsight, the signs were always there, buried in lyrics, veiled in interviews, etched in the tension behind her eyes. But no one stopped the machine. The show had to go on. The brand had to be protected. And so Demi smiled for the cameras. She performed, she survived, until she didn't. On the morning of July 24, 2018, Demi Lovato was found unresponsive in her Los Angeles home. Paramedics arrived to a scene of chaos, panicked assistance, slurred cries, and a young woman lying lifeless. She had overdosed on a lethal cocktail, heroin laced with fentanyl, the same synthetic opioid that killed Prince and Mac Miller. Her heart had stopped. She suffered multiple strokes, Her brain was deprived of oxygen. She was legally blind for days. And for 6 long minutes, Demi Lovato was, by every medical definition, dead. But the overdose was just the final act of a story she had been trying to tell for years, one that no one wanted to hear. The days that followed were eerily silent. The media speculated. Fans flooded social media with prayers, but Demi's team, trained in damage control, said almost nothing. Only weeks later did the world learn how close she came to dying. The cost of survival was staggering. Permanent vision loss, brain damage, and the shattering of the tightly controlled narrative she had built for over a decade. In 2021, she finally broke her silence with Dancing with the Devil, a raw, 4-part documentary that stripped away all remaining illusions. And the truth was darker than anyone had imagined. She wasn't just using drugs, she had been violated while unconscious. She wasn't just battling addiction, she was suffocating in an industry that demanded perfection and punished weakness. She wasn't just relapsing, she had never truly recovered. In one of the documentary's most gut-wrenching revelations, Demi described how the night of her overdose, her drug dealer not only supplied her with fentanyl-laced heroin, but also sexually assaulted her while she was unconscious. "When they found me, I was naked, blue," she said. "I was literally left for dead." The same dealer returned the next morning to give her more drugs, and she let him in. The line between addiction and self-destruction had blurred completely. "I was no longer in control," she admitted. "I had crossed a line that I'd never thought I'd cross." In a desperate attempt to reclaim her story, Demi rejected the strict sobriety model she had once promoted. She began using the term California sober, allowing alcohol and marijuana but abstaining from hard drugs. This drew immediate backlash from addiction recovery advocates, many of whom accused her of glamorizing a dangerous path. Others saw it as a necessary compromise in a life marred by extremes. But the controversy didn't stop there. In 2021, Demi announced that they were non-binary and would now use they-them pronouns. The internet exploded. Support poured in, but so did criticism. Some accused her of attention-seeking. Others questioned the timing, accusing her of rebranding after the overdose fallout. Then, in 2022, she returned to she/her, explaining that gender fluidity was, for her, an evolving journey. Once again, she was both praised for her honesty and mocked for her inconsistency. In a world addicted to labels, Demi refused to be boxed in. Yet the most heartbreaking part of this chapter wasn't the overdose. It was the realization that so many people around her had known she was slipping and did nothing. In Dancing with the Devil, she confessed that her management team had silenced her, manipulated her, and controlled her life so tightly that even asking for chocolate was a battle. "I wasn't allowed to have sugar in rehab," she said. "They told me it would make me relapse." She was being treated like a ticking time bomb rather than a human being in pain. "I was surviving for other people," she said, "not for myself." The public reaction was split. Some hailed her bravery. Others were fatigued by what felt like a never-ending cycle of breakdowns and comebacks. But for those truly listening, this was the moment Demi finally told the whole truth. And that truth was not glamorous. It wasn't marketable. It wasn't inspirational. It was devastating. For over a decade, she had sung about strength, about rising above. But now, she admitted she wasn't always strong, that she had wanted to give up, that sometimes she still did. "I didn't overdose because I was weak," she said. "I overdosed because I was tired of fighting." In the end, Demi Lovato's darkest moment wasn't the overdose. It was waking up to realize how many people had loved the performer, but ignored the person. And somehow, from the wreckage, she still chose to live. At Aussie Uncovered, we don't see Demi Lovato as just another cautionary tale. We see her as a mirror, reflecting a culture that devours its young, especially when they're gifted, especially when they're women, and especially when they dare to be human. There's something disturbingly familiar about Demi's story. The child star thrust into the spotlight, the industry-crafted image of perfection, the suppression of real pain beneath marketing slogans of empowerment, and the inevitable breakdown when that pain finally claws its way to the surface. But Demi Lovato didn't just break. She shattered in full view of the world. And that matters, because for every person who criticized her choices, who labeled her dramatic, unstable, or a lost cause, there were thousands who recognized their own battles in hers. Addiction, trauma, self-hate, identity confusion. These are not plot lines, they are lived experiences. And Demi, by exposing every broken piece of herself, made space for others to do the same. Her bravery doesn't lie in her survival, it lies in her truth-telling. In a pop industry that thrives on illusion, Demi Lovato refused to stay silent. She risked her career to speak about being raped while working for Disney. She challenged the entire framework of sobriety with her controversial California Sober stance, not because it was perfect, but because it was hers. She experimented, failed publicly, corrected course, and kept going. And yes, she confused us. Yes, she contradicted herself. Yes, she stumbled, hard and often. But that's the point. Demi Lovato isn't a symbol of resilience because she got it all right. She's powerful because she didn't, because she allowed herself to be messy, emotional, unfiltered, and still stood up. It would be easy to write her off as just another fallen Disney star, but that would miss the deeper tragedy and the deeper triumph. This isn't about one overdose. It's about a lifetime of being told who to be and finally asking, but what if I'm not her? From a channel perspective, we don't glorify her pain, but we do honor her transparency. That's rare. And in an era where image is currency, honesty like hers is revolutionary. Demi Lovato has become something the industry fears. A woman who can't be packaged anymore. She's no longer the clean-cut face of Disney, no longer the carefully curated pop idol. She's a survivor of her own mythology, and that makes her dangerous to the system that tried to control her and to the silence that once protected it. Her story forces uncomfortable questions. How many more stars have whispered cries for help into microphones only to be ignored? How many redemption arcs are really just reruns of trauma sold back to us as entertainment? And when do we, the audience, stop consuming their downfall as spectacle? Demi Lovato didn't choose to be a symbol, but she's become one. Not of success, not of perfection, but of what it costs to finally say, "This is me." For a moment, the music stopped. The lights faded, the world held its breath, and Demi Lovato slipped into the void, heart silent, body broken, soul dangling somewhere between this life and whatever waits beyond. But somehow, she came back. Not as the girl from Camp Rock, not as the polished Disney product or the glamorous pop star on the red carpet. She returned as something far more rare and far more dangerous. A woman who remembered everything. The pain, the pressure, the performance, the silence. And she told us, not all stories of survival are triumphant. Some are jagged, ongoing, unresolved. Demi's legacy isn't wrapped in a bow. It's scattered in the lyrics of Sober, Anyone, Skyscraper, and the moments between the lines when her voice trembled and we finally heard her truth. She's still here. But the girl we thought we knew, the bright smile, the Disney glow, the innocent stardom, that girl died long before the overdose. What remains is someone braver. Not unbroken, but rebuilt. Someone who wakes up every day knowing that she once died and chose to live anyway. There's something haunting about that kind of survival. It lingers like the last note of a song that once meant everything before we understood what it was really saying. We used to sing along, thinking we knew her. Now we realize we were only ever listening to her echo. And perhaps that's what makes her story unforgettable. Not because it's perfect, but because it isn't. Some stories are never told. But now you know.